Okay, well, Yuma, hello everybody. My name's Kylie Message-Jones. I'm Director of the Humanities Research Centre here at the ANU. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. Their sovereignty was never ceded over these lands. I pay my respect to the elders past and present, and I acknowledge all First Nations people who might be joining us here tonight. It's a delight and a very special and deep honour to welcome you here tonight for what's day one of the Humanities Research Centre's 50th birthday celebration program. We kicked off our celebrations earlier today with Paul Girawar House, who's a Ngambri, Cambri, Ngunnawal, Wiradjuri custodian. He welcomed us to country on the lakeside of Old Canberra House, down toward the museum, which used to be Canberra Hospital, where Paul and many other Canberrans were born. Paul showed us one of the scar trees that he's carved, and he played the stunning glass yidaki, the didgeridoo, that he's designed, I think, with ANU and Canberra Glassworks. So Old Canberra House, along with the WEH Standard Building, which is just on this side of Old Canberra House, we're both home to the Humanities Research Centre for many years from the 2000s. So this was a fitting start for understanding the role that the HRC plays at the ANU and within the community beyond. It was also a fitting start for the theme of our program for the conference, which is taken from Stanner's discussion about every when, which is a concept that unsettles the way historians, archaeologists and other scholars have conventionally treated time as a linear narrative that moves toward increasing progress and complexity. Paul's welcome was a fitting start for the week, but also, more importantly for tonight, a fitting start for tonight's special discussion that will be led by Yorta Yorta, Wamba Wamba, Mutti Mutti, Boonwurrung, multi-disciplinary artist and curator Maree Clarke, who's also going to be talking about some of her new and developing work, which is also integrating into the theme of every when. So it would be remiss of me to not invite you or to remind you of the other events that we've got happening over the next 2 days. There's a flyer out the front which you can pick up on the way out. And there'll be more information about the events on that flyer. So we're here tonight as the result of a very special collaboration between the ANU Humanities Research Centre, the Canberra Museum and Gallery, Canberra Glassworks, and the Ginninderry Conservation Trust. We have been very pleased to support Maree's work in Canberra and to work with people from these areas. I'm going to pass the mic shortly to Virginia Rigney from Canberra Museum and Gallery, who will introduce Maree and explain some context for her visit and work with the reed necklace. She will also introduce Dr. Laura Rademaker from the School of History at ANU, who will lead a discussion with Maree and Virginia following Maree's presentation. So once again, thank you for coming out on a cold, although I'm quite warm, but anyway, a cold July evening. And special thanks to Maree. I'm really delighted to have you here and looking forward to this presentation very deeply. And I'm thrilled now to pass over to Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. I'd also like to pay my respects to the lands that we are meeting here tonight, the Ngambri and the Ngunnawal peoples. And I wanted to actually give apologies that Maree and I couldn't make it to Paul's presentation earlier on today, but we do have one of his yidakis in the collection, and it's actually displayed right near the reed necklace. So the gathering here tonight is to pay, I guess I wanted to thank very much the council here for this opportunity for this Every When Fellowship. Research opportunities that are kind of open-ended, that allow porous ways for people to interact are few and far between, and with Canberra Museum and Gallery being the custodian through a long-term loan of the reed necklace by the owner, Catherine Palmer. It had been on display for more than 6 years, but it hadn't really, I guess, made an impact in the way that we were keen to see it make an impact, given its significance. It's a relatively humble object visually when you first encounter it. And so it was seeing Maree's work, particularly in Melbourne at the NGV, and that I thought, here really is an artist who has the deep knowledge, the research, but also the community-based practices that could speak to this necklace and could connect a lot of dots together. And so when the opportunity for the Every When Fellowship came up, I thought we'll try for this. So thrilled that Maree was able to accept that invitation to try for it, and that we were successful with it. So what the fellowship has enabled Maree to do is to be here for 3 weeks. We've had a busy time. I won't go into it all at the moment, but needless to say, it's been we've covered a lot of terrain and met a number of different people. And in part, a really important partner in making this happen has been Canberra Glassworks. Maree has had a long engagement with Canberra Glassworks, and I acknowledge Amy, who is here from Canberra Glassworks, and Tom Rowney, who are just, Canberra Glassworks is of international standing. Maree's made a number of works there, so it's a really great fit that they've been able to support her visit. But also Ginninderry Trust, who haven't necessarily been engaged with us terribly much before, but when I invited their First Nations rangers to come and have a look at the reed necklace last year, about this time last year, it was really powerful for them, because they said, actually, we are replanting reeds on this country now after more than 100 years of sheep and cattle on this creek. So to see reeds in this reed necklace now, it's very empowering for us. So Maree will talk a little bit about our engagement, how they have facilitated our access to country. So really wanted to thank Ginninderry Trust. So we're going to hear from Maree. Maree, as you hopefully have read through her biography, which is very extensive, that I won't sort of launch into, but I think that Maree's really one of the longest standing practitioners in contemporary revitalisations of culture. So she's been really involved in the re-establishment of possum skin cloaks, and now, her practice leads now into electron microscopes and all sorts of different ways of seeing and recharging culture, but always doing it with a real sensitivity and knowledge to materials and community. So Maree's now working on some major transport infrastructure, public art projects, but one that I really encourage you to visit if you haven't had the chance already is the new library in Melbourne at the Farmers Market, or not the Farmers Market, Melbourne Market, which Vic Markets, yeah. Will you show any? Yeah. So that's just an absolutely stunning building. I think Maree's recently come back from a major fellowship in Florence at the Museum of Anthropology in Florence, and that's one of the projects that I think she'll talk about. And she also gave a talk at the Tate in London. So I think what you're going to hear tonight is some of the outputs and some of the insights from those visits and experiences, as well as a little bit of a taster of what we've been doing over the last 3 weeks. It's been an absolute pleasure to be hosting Maree, and thank you very much for coming.
Well, hi everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation. I would also like to pay my respects to the local mob, the Ngambri and Ngunnawal people, and their elders past, present and emerging. I'm going to share with you this evening basically my 30 plus years of practice, which has got me to this point now in my career. And being able to come up here over the last 3 weeks meeting with local people and sharing stories, knowledge, and being taken out on country is just so special. Now, I'll just drive this. So I tend to title my presentations Bloodlines, because absolutely everything that I do is connected to my country, to my family and my culture, and I'm connected to quite a few different mobs, and hopefully you'll see that through my work. But I thought I'd just share this little 3-minute video which will basically set the scene.
I just think it's so important to pass on cultural knowledge. It's who you are, it's where you're from, it's part of you, it's part of me. And the only way that I can do that is through art. Every time I'm involved in a new exhibition, it's like, how do you recreate culture in a really positive, respectful way and put it out there? My work now is about recreating objects and items from museums, things that haven't been made for a long, long time, learning the cultural practices that haven't been practiced for many, many years, and passing that cultural knowledge on to my family. I think it's about, letting people know that we're here, we're still here, and we still have, all of this knowledge and all of this information that we're still passing on to our children that have been passed on for thousands and thousands of generations. I love to involve my family. That will hopefully inspire them. They will learn along the way, and they can then pass that on to their children. Even though I do all of this research for my art practice, I don't feel like I need to find out who I am and who I'm connected to, because I already know that. I've grown up with a really strong sense of who I am, who my family are, where our country is. I am so connected to my family and my country that I'm not searching for anything. I just want to make art.
That's basically me in a nutshell. And so this particular image is taking my nieces and my nephews out on country, and we're looking for basically dead kangaroos, which is the only way to make these sort of 75 tooth kangaroo tooth necklaces that I make. The image on the right are my river reeds that I've collected, bundled, cut, dyed, because our river reeds down south are collected from salty water. I have to put them through 2 lots of clean water boilings before I put them through a dye bath. And then I sometimes sort of drill holes in them and then glue 2 feathers to make my sort of 50-metre river reed necklaces. And then the bottom ones are quandong seeds. And when I first moved to Melbourne, this is how I used to make my living. I used to sort of get up every day and make jewellery and supply little boutique shops in the Melbourne Museum. But my brother used to cut out those beautiful shapes, and we'd use sort of echidna quills, and my brother still ate echidna quills. So when he got the echidna to eat, I got the quills, and then you would sort of sort through thousands of quills to get those beautiful sort of colorations. And then after moving to Melbourne, I worked with a photographer for 2 years, and she'd been to South Africa, and there were so many black photographers there. She came back here, and I think there was Mervyn Bishop and Tracy Moffat. So she created a project to train 2 Aboriginal women in photography. And we ended up going to every Aboriginal community in Victoria, photographing different events or, you know, generations of families together. And that was through the Victorian Women's Trust. Some of my early photos that were in my exhibition, Ancestral Memories at the NGV. And then I thought I might like to have a crack at making a photographic hologram. And I had no idea how to do it. Flew to Adelaide, had a 3-hour meeting in the airport with a physicist. Went back to Melbourne, got funding, flew him over, and we had a 17-hour day at Footscray Community Arts Centre, where I recreated my grandmother's lounge room pre-1967 for Defying Empire here at the NGA. And so I had a friend build me the mantelpiece. There were feather flowers. We sort of learnt how to make feather flowers. You know, there was always a Bible, you know, the old fan, everything. I just sort of searched everywhere looking for these objects to recreate my grandmother's lounge room pre-1967. This is up on the Murrumbidgee River. My family and I lived in a tent by the river, and my bed was a suitcase. And so for this particular series, I wanted to make lenticular prints. And again, I found somebody that knew how to sort of put it all together. And I actually borrowed a tent from the Scouts up in Mildura to sort of, as one of my props. And we weren't the only Aboriginal family living on the mission in Balranald, down behind the old mission. There were quite a few different families sort of living there. And then I was the arts officer at the City of Port Phillip, and the Wee Homeborn, we basically got a 3-tonne truck, went to every Aboriginal community in Victoria collecting artwork. And it was the biggest visual arts festival of basically putting Southeast Australian Aboriginal art on the map. But sad to say, still today, you know, when you say you're an artist and the first thing is, do you do dot paintings? No, I don't. Barely even paint. Power and the Passion is about the setting up of the Koori Heritage Trust, where Jim Berg, Ron Caston and Ron Merkel took Melbourne University and the Museum of Victoria, pardon me, to court to stop skeletal remains going to the US for exhibition. Those remains that could be provenance were sent back to country. Those that couldn't be sent back are now buried in the Domain Gardens, in the Botanical Gardens in Melbourne. And the book, sort of like reading a map, is about the Victorian Aboriginal art movement. And you can actually download that one off the internet. One of, this is a huge public art commission in Melbourne a few years ago now, but this is down near the aquarium at Enterprise Park. And each artist got to have 3 pier poles, and we could carve onto that pole whatever we wanted. So mine are the black and white ones with the big canoe scar shapes, which talk about the stolen generations. Another public art commission with Vicky Cousins, Jeff Neal and Megan Cadd, and it's a big, I think it's about 12 mil thick stainless steel feather that talks about Bunjil flying over the land, Bunjil our creator, and the feather falls from his chest, lands on the land, creates all these habitats for the animals to come back. 3 mil thick spun stainless steel, which talk about new life, new beginnings, new communities. And again with Vicky Cousins and Jeff Neal. This is out at Point Cook. a big 3-metre bronze kangaroo apple. So when the kangaroo apple's out in the Murrini daisy is when the eels come back up Cannonook Creek down around Frankston, and there'd be a big corroboree down by the beach, and women would pull possum pelts over their knees and drum, and the men would dance. And the women would also make daisy chains out of the Murrini daisies. Some beautiful seats outside Wesley Place. This is with Trent Jansen, and one is cast charcoal, which talks about the burning of the land and represents Wurundjeri. The other one is river reeds, which represent Boonwurrung country. Excuse me. And it's all cast bronze, and also using sticks from country. So as often as I can, I try and collect materials from country. Another commission that I worked on with my great-nephew, Mitch Marnie, talking about the journey of the eel. And this is Vivid last year with the electric canvas, and they basically squished my 30 years of practice into this sort of fabulous projection onto the MCA. And then this is the commission that Virginia was talking about, Nam Nagu. It's the new library opposite Queen Vic Market. And basically there's nothing better than walking into a blank canvas like this and just dreaming your ideas into that. And the budget was just fantastic. Nothing like a good budget. And so once I realised that there was also going to be a childcare centre there, I thought, what better way to start instilling in these children, you know, knowledge and information about Aboriginal culture. So I thought, how about if they learn about the 7 seasons of the Kulin Nation through these images, so that, well, that just skipped. Yeah. And so we colour-coded all of the animals and plants. Then the passageway had all this straight mirror, and I asked if I could design a forest to go over the mirror so kids could still catch glimpses of themselves on their way to the library. And then once they got into the library, they would be in their colour-coded sections and learn about the 7 seasons all at the same time. And it was pretty much my passion project for the last 18 months. And then I asked them what they were doing for the adult library carpet, and it was going to be these ugly carpet squares. So I said, can I also design that carpet? So I got somebody from my arts team, Hilary Jackman, to create this beautiful watercolour, pardon me, and we put the 5 clans of the Kulin Nation country lines over top. And sort of, and it's just the most beautiful space to sit in. And then also for the terrace, I designed the soft fall around the children's play area. We'd cast my husband's Coolman in cast iron that's on the terrace. And my fabricator made the big 6-metre eel trap that children can climb through, but it's just the most beautiful space to sit and, yeah, think, contemplate, read. This is the Ethnographic Anthropological Museum in Florence, where I've just spent like 5 weeks making 3 giant 50-metre river reed necklaces, collecting river reeds from the River Arno. And it was totally the wrong season. It was sort of coming out of winter into spring, and you normally collect them in the summer, but you know, we made it work. But I'm able to now identify Southeast Australian Aboriginal objects held in these museum collections. And I was lucky enough to sort of take a lot of these objects out and photograph them. The British Museum, I'm holding a box with a kangaroo tooth necklace using all of the teeth of the kangaroo. And that little possum pelt I'm holding, we don't know what the story is with that pelt. All it says is Victoria, but it doesn't have any other provenance. And the other objects and the emu feather skirt are all provenance to Victoria. Saffron Walden, and with museums like this in the UK, or really anywhere in the world, it would be great to give these objects a community and a story and a connection to country. Because when I see images like this, it's almost like, you know, the blackfella standing on the rock with the family and time has stood still. And we are the oldest continuous living culture on the planet, but these exhibitions just don't reflect that. So one day, you know, it'd be great to take a mob over there, elders, young people, and share that knowledge. I think this is Pitt Rivers Museum at Oxford University, Berlin. And then from all of seeing all those shields, this is sort of a series that I made in my backyard. These images from people down on at Gunditjmara country in the Western Districts. And these were actually props for the photographer that was taking these photos. And that necklace is now held in a museum in Scotland. Pitt Rivers Museum. Down in the bottom image with the pelvis bone, that's almost like a three-bladed knife that you would use to scrape the fat off, you know, possum pelts or kangaroo pelts or whatever. Out on country collecting. And the kids know not to take the tooth or the skull or the jaw before I've photographed it. So I've got one of the biggest collections of roadkill, jaws, teeth, you know, all sorts of things. My CSI photographs when I'm out on country, you know, they're pretty amazing, sculptural, beautiful things. And throughout all of this, I'm vegan. So it took me a little while to actually do this, but I can do it. But my husband is the one that can stop at the fresh roadkill and take that jaw out. I can't come at that yet. And then this is a process, once we get it home, getting the sinew out of the tail of a kangaroo, preparing all the leather, and the big neck piece for the leather, and then that's the necklace. And I only use the 2 bottom incisor teeth when I make these necklaces. That's the largest one to date, with 123 teeth, and that was to fit into a 12 by 1200 glass case for Melbourne Now. And then of course I got Canberra Glassworks. I flew to Canberra with all my little sort of bits and pieces and said, could you please make me some glass kangaroo teeth? So the team made this beautiful glass crystal kangaroo tooth necklace, and it's bound with kangaroo sinew and kangaroo leather. And then this particular necklace was put together by my nieces and nephews. So my husband taught the nieces and nephews how to pull the sinew out of the tail. I showed them how to cut the leather and put it together, and that's using one of my 3D printed 18 karat gold plated kangaroo teeth. And then this is a collection I did with the NGV for Design Week a few years ago, and we worked in Blanche Tilden's studio, and she did all the snake chains and the clasps for me. And this jewellery literally walked out the door the day it was launched. So it's 3D printed kangaroo teeth, echidna quills, and crow feathers. And the two absolutely beautiful eel traps that Canberra Glassworks fabricated for me, I want to say like 2017, 18, something like that, for the old quad at Melbourne University, and one for translating traditions here at Canberra Glassworks. But this was at my show, Ancestral Memories, at the NGV. And this is at the old quad at Melbourne University. So I flew to Canberra with my little piece of plastic and my sketch and said, asked Canberra Glassworks if they could supersize it to 3 metres, make it proportionally right, which they absolutely did. And we ended up with this beautiful thing. And well, that's the second one. So I find this one quite masculine, the other one I find quite feminine. And then I won the Melbourne Urban Sculpture Prize last year, or this year, gosh, I can't remember now. But it allowed me the funds to have this beautiful Murrini glass canoe made by Canberra Glassworks, Tom, Amy, Jacqueline, the team, Kirsty, and the 2 Murrini shields. And all the other pieces, the beautiful clear shield and the canoe, were fabricated at Tacoma Museum and Art Gallery. And the River Reed vessels were fabricated at Pilchuck with Nettie Blair and Dan Friday. And they're based on the River Reeds with the knuckles. Remember Me is an ephemeral artwork where I had all the language groups of Victoria printed onto these calico canoe scar shapes with the language words repeated, and the ones in the middle were bold, and I had them painted with glow-in-the-dark paint so that at night it became something else. And it's that thing, say my name 3 times and remember me. And I had Mandy Nicholson whisper the names 3 times, and that recording went out through the bush. So it was absolutely beautiful being in that space. Ritual and Ceremony, which talks about the morning practices of people along the Murray-Darling rivers and Murrumbidgee. And huts were built using sticks similar to these, and women would sit in there and wail. But the little white domes are Kopi morning caps. So I worked with 38 Aboriginal women in Victoria, got their stories of lost sorrow and mourning, sitting on a bed of red dirt where the practice is from. And yeah, it was a pretty beautiful show, very moving. And then there's been so many different iterations of this work. And that's one of the historical Kopi morning caps held in the British Museum. And it just says it's from up along the Murray. Some of the historical Kopi morning caps from Latchi country. So I got permission to use these images and permission off my elders to make that particular body of work. And the sticks for this installation is 500 sticks from country. My great-nephew, Mitch Marnie, did about, 4 trips up on the Murray, collected the sticks, drove them into my sister's place for the exhibition up in Mildura. And then I ended up working with 45 Aboriginal men, and I went to the Melbourne Museum to learn how to make scars to stick onto their chest. But I was working with like extra small to 7XL. So I ended up designing 7 t-shirts, and the men could just choose whatever t-shirt they wanted to wear that they were comfortable in and photograph them. This is in Adelaide. And from that particular body of work, you know, this is Cuba, London, Cuba again. But I've also created like Kobe healing workshops where I've done them in London, Geneva, and in Melbourne, where I get people together, create a safe space for people to make a Kobe morning cup, put their thoughts and energies into that. Sort of towards the end of the session is people sharing their stories, as big or as small as they like. I always ask for a counsellor to be present because it brings up a lot for a lot of different people, and it's just an incredible thing to do. Melbourne Museum. There's all my nieces and nephews up in Mildura, and they all love performing at my openings as often as they can. Possum skin cloaks. I think it was 2006 we had the Commonwealth Games in Victoria, something like that. We split the state into 4. Vicky Cousins, Lee Darrick and Trina Ham and myself all work with communities within those areas, and taking back to community the skill of possum skin cloak making. So we took needle thread, 30 pelts, designs from their own area, and after doing all this research, looking at different, possum pieces, skins, pelts, cloaks, held in museum collections. This one's in Berlin. Different ones that we've made around the state. Some of these were used for the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games. Yep. And I think we had 35 of the 38 language groups because the possum was their totem and they couldn't work with the possum skins. But that was an extraordinary thing to do. And now people are using possum skin cloaks for ceremony, back in their community for baby naming days. This is in the US, in South Hadley. A couple of years ago, I travelled with my family and we made a possum skin cloak for Mount Holyoke College. My great niece Molly. That's my 43 possum skin cloak with all the different countries that I'm connected to, including Dunstable in the UK and Tipperary in Ireland, that are mapped on my cloak. I had an artist residency in Prato through Monash University, and I wanted to make a possum skin cloak. Well, they were all up in arms about me taking pelts over there. So we ended up making a textile cloak at the local textile museum in Prato. It was pretty fantastic. And then this is a buffalo skin robe and a possum skin cloak that we made in Ottawa a few years ago, and working with, incredible artists. And we did this whole cultural exchange and working on each other's cloaks. This is one we made for my brother, who we knew was sort of passing, soon. And all the family came around, and we sewed it together, designed it, all put our handprints on it. The middle in the shield is my brother's handprint and his partner, his wife Donna. And my brother got to use this cloak before he passed. When he passed, we went and wrapped him in it and yeah, he was cremated with his cloak. And then this is Len Tregonning, and we were collaborators sort of in life and, you know, making culture and different practices. I had that cloak made for his 60th birthday, and when he passed, I had his family and friends come around and we marked his cloak, and I was able to go in and wrap him in his cloak. And it's the first time the Melbourne Museum have had a contemporary return to country of anybody. So we had his ceremony in at Bunjalaka, and then he was taken back to country. It was, and we had the 5 elders of the 5 clans of the Kulin Nation do a smoking ceremony in Kalea Gardens, and his coffin was painted by a Gunai man. So everything was connected. And for us, because there's only like, I think 5 or 6 possum skin cloaks left in the world, like to be able to bring this practice back, but you can understand why there are only, you know, so few left in the world. And with my family, you know, we're making all of our nieces and nephews and elders possum skin cloaks. And river reed necklaces, goodness me. So for Boonwurrung people, river reed necklaces were given to people passing through country as a sign of safe passage and friendship. The one on the left is a necklace held in the Melbourne Museum, and Kimberly Moulton is wearing one of my 50-metre river reed necklaces with cockatoo feathers. This is my nephew Jacob wearing probably 15 to 20 metre plain river reed necklace. Magnolia, this was for Vogue Australia a couple of years ago. This was from Ancestral Memories, and that's 3 50-metre river reed necklaces. But, sorry. This is a microscopic image of the river reed, from the root of a river reed. So before I went to Europe for my artist residency, I spent 2 months in the histology department, 2 days a week, looking at the river reeds under a microscope, and I absolutely fell in love. After looking at them and using the polarisers and putting them through the dyes, to me they look like paintings of country or whatever. And then my nephew Mitch Marnie has done the beautiful river design over top. And this is for the new Footscray Hospital that's being built in Melbourne. And it's going to be turned into a 10 by 4.2 metre tapestry. And this is 3 of the girls doing the cartoon onto the threads. And there are 2 5-metre looms that they're working on, and they're working at 10 centimetres a week. Blows my mind. And I just love how they've got that river to like skim over the top. It's just so beautiful. And that's what it will look like in the space. The architect's render. And then this little number is a 7.5 metre river reed canoe. My great nephew Mitch Marnie on the right, husband down there in the colourful shirt, and Pete documenting the whole process for us. This is for the new Mirvac Tower number 9 down in Docklands, and it's going to be cast in bronze. It's a pretty beautiful thing. It also has a fire pit in it, but I also took it down to Williamstown Beach and used it with my nieces and nephews and did a whole photo shoot. And I wanted to use it before it went to Queensland to be cast in bronze. And at the moment I'm sort of also working on 5, 6 camp dogs at home, the biggest one being 1 metre down to like 50 mil, and they'll also be cast in bronze, and they'll be sort of in and around the canoe. So this is us down the beach with the canoe, and the nieces and nephews had made all the river reed necklaces that day down on the beach. They also ground up all the ochre and painted each other up before the photo shoot. It was a fantastic day. It was a bit chilly like today, actually. And after sort of hanging out in the histology department at Melbourne Uni, I came up with this sort of whole series of micrograms for Between Waves at ACCA, which was late last year. And I had printed 400, but they managed to hang 297. And now they're also being shown onto Fed Square big screen every evening for the next 18 months. So every evening the light goes down, these come on, and it's just such a beautiful thing to see. And that's what Morgan, my assistant at Pilchuck, when she saw the micrograms, said, "Maree, that's Murrini glass." And when I came home from Florence, to 8 boxes of glass and plates in my lounge room, and Canberra Glassworks sort of started working on the beautiful canoe. And then they'd also fabricated the glass river reeds, glass seed pods that I fill with ochre and charcoal from country. This was another shoot for Vogue. This is Magnolia wearing one of the 10-metre glass river reed necklaces with cockatoo feathers. And then here we are, Ginninderry Creek. I just love this painting. And this is my first day here 3 weeks ago, where Tyson and Kai had taken me down to the creek which runs into the Murrumbidgee. And the image on the right are some of the little river reeds that Tyson had pulled out of the ground for me. This is us at Ginninderry Falls. And the river reed necklace that I'd come up here to see. I think this was sort of way before it ended up in the museum and art gallery. But that's Minnie Palmer, who the necklace was gifted to. But that's a necklace on the right today in the Canberra Museum and Art Gallery. And just today, I actually got to meet some Ngunnawal women who are probably descendants of the maker of this necklace. And to be able to, have the skills that I have and the knowledge I have around river reeds and making these river reed necklaces, like for the mob up here, it's a skill that, has probably been laying dormant, or, it's a little bit lost, or it's asleep. But they're really, really interested in remaking this necklace or similar ones. And so when I come back again, probably closer to the summer, where the river reeds will be green, each one of those little reeds are cut to 5 mil. Now that's just incredible. In 1862, when this necklace was gifted to Minnie Palmer, how would they have done that? So I'm taking some samples home, and I'm just going to, test different blades, and, mussel shells may have been sharpened and cut and, to cut them. I'm not sure, but there were mussels, and I think there still are mussels in the river here. but it's a very beautiful object made in, this particular one is 12 strands. It's the same as the black and white image. Yeah. And the photo on the left with the two little reeds together, it looks like that's where a join would have been, and we just don't know what that join, how they would have joined the thread together, and actually what is the thread. And I find the river reeds here quite small, like they're really tiny, and ours down south are like, 2 to 3 metres tall, and we're able to make those big canoes out of them. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure why they're so little. But I guess we'll find out soon enough. That's about it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Ngunnawal Ngambri country, and to pay my respects to them and their elders, and to thank Maree for such a rich presentation. I have so much I'd love to chat about. I think this is going to be a great discussion. I guess I wanted to start with what really struck me when you said in so many exhibitions and collections, it's like time has stood still. And when you're thinking about the question of every when, there's often a misconception that every when means timelessness, when really I think what your art practice is showing us, it's about representing the past in the present, or revealing the ways that the past is still with us in the present. Would you say that resonates with your practice?
I just think if we don't grow and adapt and change and bring things into the 21st century, we will be like those museum pieces and we'll be stuck. And I just so believe that we have to sort of keep thinking of new ways to invent ourselves and tell stories, because we are telling stories now. We have to create our own stories. Not everything was, passed down through story. We've had to go back and research in papers, generally written by, non-Aboriginal people that came here. So to go back and look at those, sometimes take that with a grain of salt. Maybe add your own spin in there and retell that story from an Aboriginal perspective.
You've just made me think of the Ginninderry necklace itself. I wonder if you could tell us a bit more of that story. It was the generosity of those Ngunnawal elders so long ago, giving it to this white woman.
Well, they weren't elders; they were young.
Well, they were, as in the old people. Sorry, not elders at the time.
So Catherine Palmer has told us the story of how the necklace was gifted to her great grandmother, and that her great grandmother Minnie had grown up at Palmerville as a 3-year-old in the 1840s, and when her playmates, her friends were Aboriginal girls, and when she's sent to Sydney to go to boarding school for the last 2 years of her schooling, which is about 15 or 16, there's a girls' school on the Parramatta River near where King's School is now. She writes home to her parents to say, my friends at school are amazed that I know how to swim. My friends at Ginninderry had taught me. And so there's this early written evidence from her that she had these friendships. And when she comes home and is engaged to be married in August 1862, and then is married in October 1862 at St John's Church, the night before the wedding, the story is Jemmy the Rover, a well-known Aboriginal man, rides through the night and presents the necklace to her on the eve of her marriage. It's then kept by her
by Minnie and then passed to her daughter and then to Catherine. And Catherine, Maree and I and our colleague Hannah sat with Catherine for really basically most of a day and talked with her about her stories of her family. And I guess one of the strongest things that I remember her saying when I asked her, so where did your family keep the necklace? Was it in a box in a cupboard? And she said, oh no, it was above the mantelpiece. It was next to a photo of Minnie, and that was part of our family memory. And that it was especially, I think, what came across to me very much as a women's story as well, that she, as Catherine being the only daughter of a daughter of a daughter, it was an important sort of story to pass on. So that's how she comes to own it.
But incredible to see how it's found its way back to community after all these years.
I know.
I guess Catherine recognising 6 or 7 years ago when she was approached by our then senior curator of social history, Dale Middleby, for CMAG to be the long-term, to loan it to CMAG on a long-term basis.
Yeah.